Hello, welcome to episode 4 with a very strange title that I will explain. It's to kind of commemorate the fact that there have been 3 floods since I saw you last. Not out there, out there's been beautiful until today, wonderful sunshine, bit of a cold wind but beautiful weather. But actually 3 floods inside the house. One on every floor, no favouritism here. It's been a bit of a trying week. My husband, who decorated the bathroom and the living room before he went back to work after being on furlough, is probably on the verge of a bit of a breakdown at the moment because the bathroom and the living room are the 2 rooms that have been destroyed by said floods. But never mind, that's enough of that. We don't want to talk about that. Let us move on to a finished object. Yes, I have finished my sugar plum shawl, which I struggle to say, but I managed it today. Here it is. It is humongous. And bearing in mind, this is 120 grams of yarn, a bit less. It's enormous. When I finished it, I have to admit, I was really disappointed with it. And anyone who's knit lace before will tell you that before you block it, it always looks like a bit of a dog's dinner. When it came off the needles, it did indeed look like a dog's dinner, but it also was a funny shape. It was kind of a squared off horseshoe shape because of the way you increase. But now it's been blocked, it's lovely, and it's a lovely crescent shape. And I'm quite relieved about that because I was a little bit sad last night when I finished it because I've knit it with my beautiful yarn from Craft House Magic, and I didn't want to have ruined or wasted my yarn on something that I didn't like. So this is her Fade to Grey colourway, and it's so soft, so soft. I washed it in Johnson's baby shampoo, which somebody recommended to me as being good because I haven't got any proper wool wash, because wool is a new thing to me, proper wool. Excuse me, keep sniffing. I've got horrendous hay fever, which is normally over by this time of year, but it's kicked off something fierce, and I just, well, just sniffy, even though I have had an antihistamine. Anyway, digressing again. Yeah, so Craft House Magic yarn, Sugar Plum Shawl by Mina Phillips. It's lovely. And I did alter the pattern a little. I did, because it's a pattern that you can adjust to suit. I had too much yarn for the smallest size and not quite enough yarn for the largest size, so I fiddled. So I did 9 repeats of the garter, and then I did 4 repeats of the lace, and then after the lace you should do 4 more rows, but I just did 2, and then I cast off. So yeah, so that I'm really quite pleased with now. I wanted to finish it this week because I was hoping to take part in another knit along, because this is part of Craft House Magic's spring shawl along, and I must remember to put it in the shawl along because my memory is awful. I wanted to finish that so I could start another knit along which begins on the 1st of May, but I've changed my mind about that. I'm not going to get involved in that, and I'll tell you why later. Yeah. And I have a half finished object. I have 1 sock of my little shorties I was doing. And this I knit sitting in the garden all last week, alternately bundled up and stripping off because it was either hot or far too cold, depending on whether the sun or the wind was getting me. And I've knit it toe up, striped it 2 rows of each colour. The blue is my wool from Ange Knits in her frozen colourway, and the cream is West Yorkshire Spinners Milk Bottle. And I've done an afterthought heel, but on reflection, when I do a pair like this again, I'm going to try a different heel, because I'm not sure these are going to stay on my feet. I think the afterthought heel might pull them down a little bit, but we'll see. And I've got that far with the next one, so I only just started that last night, not very far. The other pair of socks I was making, I've almost got a half finished object, because again it's having an afterthought heel, so the sock itself is done, but it still needs its heel. So I've put in the markers, and what I'll do is I will pick up stitches either side of the markers, so the row above and the row below. Then I pull this one, cut that stitch, unpick that row, and then knit the heel. They're on their way. I haven't yet cast on the second one because I got involved in something else. My jumper has been very neglected. I almost didn't bother and show you, but I thought, no, I will show you. We won't have a proper look, but I'll show you how much progress there has not been on this jumper. I've done that much. So what? 3-4 inches? Not very much at all. Because I've been distracted by other things, which I will show you in just a second. And this has now got to the boring bit. So I've really got to be a bit stricter with myself. And I will be, and I'll talk about why in a minute. So the thing that I've been distracted with, I decided that I wanted to knit or make scrap blankets. And I've looked and looked and looked. I've got loads of scraps of sock yarn left. Everybody in the world seems to be doing either a Cozy Memories or a granny stripe. And they weren't quite what I was looking for. The Cozy Memories would have worked, because what I want is something that will show a block of the nice colour of the yarn, so I can look at it and go, oh yes, that was so-and-so's socks. So Cozy Memories would have worked, except that I absolutely hate knitting those little mitered squares. I started a blanket earlier in the year for another knit along. It was a 100-day project, and I designed this blanket, and I was going to knit 1 square a day for 100 days, and then the blanket would be finished. And I think I did 5, and I just hated it. I hate knitting the mitered squares. They look lovely, but I don't know what it is about it. It takes longer than I expect it to. I think that's probably the thing. You think, oh, I'll just spend 5 minutes doing this, and then there you still are 20 minutes later thinking, how many more stitches? I just didn't enjoy it. And my policy at the moment is, if I'm not enjoying it, it's like that, is it a Zen thing where they say you hold it in your hand, and if it doesn't give you joy, you chuck it out? That's my new policy with knitting. If I'm not enjoying it, what is the point? I knit for pleasure, so if there's no pleasure, there's no point. Anyway, so I had a look and I had a think, and I found a pattern on YouTube. There is a written pattern. It's by a lady called She Does Crochet, and I've just been following the video tutorials. Sorry about the croak, it's the hay fever again. Because I'm not a very confident crocheter, as we have discussed before. But I saw this blanket and it was lovely, and it was exactly what I wanted. So I started. and I got this far. It's called the Felix Blanket, and it's kind of a twist on a corner to corner blanket, but the way it's constructed is very well, for me it was very complicated. For people who crochet, it's probably a lot less complicated, but I have literally been following the video tutorials minute by minute, pausing it, catching up, pausing it, catching up. So it's knit, here I go again with the knit, it's crochet in blocks that join and come out of each other. And you can't see really well on this side because of the variegated yarns, but you get a bit of an idea on this side. So you've got this block, and then what you do is you crochet this triangle and this block, and then you leave that to the side, and then you come over this side and you do this triangle and this block, and then you join the two together and you do this block, then this block. Well, that took me about 3 days, and I'm not entirely happy with the result because you can't really see how cleverly it's constructed because of the variegated yarns. So my plan is I will do the blanket again, but I'm going to use my DK, because this is all sock yarns. I'm going to use my DK scraps because they're all solid colours, and then it will be a lovely scrap blanket that you can see the herringbone effect. But that still left me with the dilemma of what was I going to do with my scraps. And then it came to me that I want a block so that you can see the beauty of the yarn, but I don't want to sew anything together because I hate sewing, which is why I'm knitting top-down jumpers, because there's no sewing. And I suddenly had an inspiration. It happens now and again, I know. And I now have this. Oh, it's upside down. I now have this even, which is Tunisian crochet. And I'm a bit better with that because it's very simple. So I got the idea from a video I saw by a lady called Tony, TL Yarn Crafts. And the year before last, she did a temperature blanket constructed this way. So essentially what she did was she made strips, and then when you move on to the next strip, you just join it on as you go. So each row you go in and you join it on. And I thought, well, that's ideal because there's no sewing. So I've done this. I started this on Sunday. I've done this much of it since Sunday. And now I'm just hunting out scraps because it is a little bit compulsive. And this last green, that's all I had left from my Craft House Magic minis that I made the shawl with, the sugar plum shawl. I must remember to keep my feet still because I just kicked the table again, sorry. So I'm really enjoying this. This is definitely going to be the way to go, and I want to make it huge. I want to make each strip pretty much as tall as I am, if not 6 foot, because I have a million sock yarns and other yarns of that weight, fingering weight, so there's going to be plenty of scraps to make a big old king size bed blanket. Sorry, the cat distracted me. She's outside and I was just keeping an eye on her. And I have on it, I nearly lost this, speaking of cats, I nearly lost this my little sheep. Cat stole him this morning. I got this from Crafty Cat Knitty Bits, and he didn't look like this when he came because I broke him, and I was so sad that I figured out, and I've repaired him. It cost £1.75. It's not exactly like it was, you know, a tragedy, but I just loved him. So I found 2 little black beads and some sewing thread, and I put him back on his hook. it won't last. I know it won't last, because otherwise, you know, that's why they don't make them with sewing thread, because it breaks. So when I saw the cat had stolen him this morning, I was a little bit worried, but he's okay. Cat's okay. Little sheep's okay. Everything's okay. So that's what's had me distracted from knitting on my jumper that I really ought to be getting on with, but just got bored, quite frankly. And the other thing I distracted myself with, I've said before, actually no, before I get onto that, I forgot at the beginning I was going to say some thank yous. I was going to say some thank yous to, I've got quite a few new subscribers, so thank you for joining me and for subscribing. It has really helped get me out there a bit more. There's next door's dog. And I also wanted to say thank you to a couple of ladies who have messaged me and said how much they enjoyed the podcast. I think you're probably a little bit mental, but thank you anyway. One of whom, now let me straighten this out. If I remember to do this, one of whom has told me how I can get round the right way. So long as I remember to do some editing when I finish, because we have talked about my short-term memory before and it is appalling, I should now be the right way round for you, which is very exciting. And that is all thanks to a lady. Her podcast is called My Yarny Corner, and she's a new podcaster as well, so we girls have got to stick together. And there's another lady I'd like to mention, and her podcast is called Little Likac Yarns, and she dies as well, if I can remember and if I can figure out how to do it. I managed it last week, so I should be able to do it. I will link them down below, but it's a bit trickier to link a YouTube video than a website. Sorry, I went a bit odd then, because I've opened the blind because the light is so poor, and the lady next door was walking down her garden and I could see her looking at me, and she was probably thinking, what on earth is that weirdo doing now? She's sat in the window talking to herself. She's gone in now, it's okay, but now I'm all a bit embarrassed. Anyway, as you were, so I distracted myself yet again when I should have been doing other things. We've talked before about how humongous and how long my to-do list is, my wish list of things that I want to knit. So I thought at the weekend I had this marvellous idea, I'm going to make a short list. So I made a short list. It will henceforth be referred to as the not very short list, because on it, hang on, let me find where I made my notes. On it I have 2 cowls, 3 pairs of socks. That's apart from all the other socks. These are specific pairs of socks that are actual patterns rather than just out of my head as I go. 7 shawls and 12 jumpers. So that's what? 22 things on my short list. And if I tell you that I have the yarn for all but one of those things, you may get an idea of the size of my problem. I thought I would just quickly run through the patterns that I'm going to make with you. I have them all here, they're all prepared. So my promise to myself is that I won't cast on any of these until I've finished these. It's a bit like you don't get any pudding until you've finished your vegetables. Now, if I tell you now, this is a huge confession. When I was a child, I hated Brussels sprouts. I love them now, And I'm not really supposed to eat them because there's something in them that's not very good for my kidneys. But I used to wait till my mum had given up waiting for me to eat my Brussels sprouts and gone out the room, and I used to hide them behind my toy box. And when we moved, there was a big pile of fossilised Brussels sprouts behind my toy box. I was 16 when we moved. Yeah. See, I'm not the angelic person you think I am. I was a very naughty girl. Right, moving swiftly on. Round and Round Cowl by Kay Litton, aka Crazy Sock Lady. Midsummer Haze, Hoagie Locatelli. These socks are actually in a thing that came with a magazine, Simply Knitting magazine, issue 200. I don't even remember how long ago that was. Lacy socks, and they are called, they're called something. What are they called? Hang on, bear with me. Peach Perfect by Ryan Drinkwater. So some lacy socks there. This is quite an interesting pattern. Both these sock patterns are toe up, and I always knit toe up, so that's quite good. I've not actually knit a pair of socks from a toe up pattern before. I've always done it by myself. These are called Vanilla Reversed. You can't see them very well because I printed in black and white, but they've got quite an interesting funky heel going on there, and they're designed so that you can wear them with the garter side out or the stocking stitch side out. So I want to knit those for my husband because he loves his hand knit socks, but he can feel the pearl bumps on the sole of his foot. He's a delicate flower, bless him. He says he doesn't mind, but I thought, well, they'd be ideal for him, so I'm going to knit those for him. Then another Crazy Sock Lady, Rhinebeck is Calling. I don't know whether I'm going to bite the bullet and knit those as they are in the pattern cuff down. I might, just for a bit of variety. Then we're on to shawls. One and Done by Casapinka, because I have many single skeins that I want to use, so that might get made more than once. The Slumber Shawl by Stephen West. Now, that counts as 3 really, because I'm going to knit another 3. I say another 3 because I have done one already. I did one earlier this year, and I absolutely loved it. I love it. I love the colour. It was really easy to knit. The only thing I will say is you have to keep a track of your rows because there's holes, there's lacy holes, and there's garter ridges, so you need to just keep an eye on where you are, because it's very easy, especially if you're using it as TV knitting, to just knit, and then think, oh, I should have made some holes, and then you've got to unpick, and there's quite a few stitches. If you have to tink it all back, you don't want to be doing that. The pattern is designed for 3 or 4 different colours, but I had this wool from Hobby, however you pronounce it. It's their Winter Glow yarn, and I loved it so much that I bought another 3 balls, as I am wont to do. They are different colours, they're not all the same. So I've got some really beautiful colours to knit this again. And I struggled to block it because I didn't have a blocking wire. I still don't have a blocking wire, but my genius husband went to his workshop last night because I needed to block the crescent-shaped sugar plum shawl, and he came back with some 5-amp fuse wire on a reel, and that worked beautifully. It was firm enough to hold it, and so when you pin it, it didn't distort between the pins. Genius idea. So there you go. Top tip, you can substitute some good stiff fuse wire or cable. I think it was cable because I think it's for motorbikes rather than, I don't know. It's man's business, that, I'm afraid, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying ladies shouldn't be involved in those things. I know a lot of ladies who are, and I'm not averse to getting my hands greasy and taking things apart and putting them back together myself. But electrics, that's wizardry, and I just can't. No. Anyway, back on track. Odyssey, again, by Hoagie Locatelli. There's a bit of a theme here. In a piece by, guess who? Hoagie Locatelli. That's all the shawls. But there are 3 slumber shawls coming. Jumpers. This one I am desperate to make. So desperate, I really hope I get on with it, because again, I'm planning 3 different versions of it. So this is the Honeycomb sweater by Stephen West. This is the Tia. It's a really light sort of, I'm not going to knit it in mohair, but I've got some, it's acrylic mohair type. I can't wear mohair. Sorry, acrylic haters, I just can't. I've got some Rowan Kid Silk Haze. Actually, that's the point. I've got some Rowan Kid Silk Haze in a beautiful bottle green that I absolutely love. I spent a fortune on it when I couldn't really afford it. And I tried knitting with it before when I first got it. And the colour comes off on my hands and on the needles. I mean a lot. 2 or 3 rows and my hands were dark green. It looked like I'd been dyeing. So if anybody has an idea about what I can do about that, because I'm a bit reluctant to knit with it. I mean, I can wash my hands and I can wipe the needles, but if it's gonna stain anything I wear it over, and obviously being Kid Silk Haze, it's not something you're gonna wear on its own, and besides which I don't want to be bottle green from the neck down. That mightn't be a bad thing, but oh sorry, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Yeah, so if anybody's got any idea about what I can do about the colour coming out, do I just live with it, and then when I've finished the garment, is there something I can do? It's something I can wash it in, something I can treat it with to stop it then coming out all over my clothes and everything else? There's a question for you. If anybody knows the answer, please comment below. Anyway, Tia by Annie Hass. This one, everyone and their neighbour's cat is knitting, and I am late to the party. Flax light. I'm always late. When matte nail varnish was a thing, I just wasn't sure. And by the time I'd worked my way round to it, I went to Boots and I asked the lady, did they have any matte top coat? And they only had one brand left. She said, oh, that phase is gone. It's like, yeah, I know. I still dress mostly like it's 1960 something, so it's part of the course really. Right, Dreamcatcher by Stylecraft. I have got some absolutely stunning blue Dreamcatcher yarn for that. This one, I can't remember who it's by, and I don't remember where I got it. But basically, it's a cabled yoke. You knit it sideways and then you put the arms and the sleeves on. Summer Drops by Carol Feller, Stolen Stitches. And this is a bit of an adventure. Granny Go Round Jumper by Iron Lamb, which is crochet. And I want to do that as kind of a rainbow jumper, I think. And the other one, the pattern isn't in here, it's downstairs in my knitting folder, because I've already knit it once. I'm struggling to think what it's called. Jewel spun. Serdar jewel spun. That's the last one. Yeah. So quite a lot to be getting on with. And what distracted me just now, and the reason I must go, is my best friend is coming round this afternoon. I'm hoping it doesn't rain because we've got to sit in the garden as per regulations. And she messaged me, and the message popped up on the screen that she was going to Sainsbury's on her way and did I want anything. So I'd better go because I haven't seen her for 7 months. And I'm quite excited that she's coming round. And I'd better reply, otherwise she will be stood in Sainsbury's thinking I'm ignoring her. So thank you once again for joining me. Please like and subscribe if you have not done so already, and if you would like to, that would be brilliant. Thank you. And I will see you again next week, hopefully with some more finished objects, and probably, let's just be honest, probably with half a dozen other things cast on that I have no business casting on because I ought to be finishing. Never mind. I'm too old to change now. I'm nearly 60. Well, nearly. Got another 4 years to go, but close enough. Half a century plus. I'm just not going to change now, am I? It's too late. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye, guys.